I write unto you, little children, because ye have known the Father. I written unto you, Father, because ye have known him that is coming from Gilead. I have written unto you, young men, because ye are strong. And the word of God abides in you. Ye have overcome the wicked one.
John used the title of the wicked one as well. He used it in he used the title of the wicked one in 4 different verses, and 3 out of those 4 verses, it refers directly to the devil. We've just read 2 of them. The other passage is found in 1 John chapter 5 and verse 18. If someone would like to read that. 1 John 5:18.
We know that whosoever is born of God sinneth not, for he is begotten of God, and keepeth himself, and the wicked one toucheth him not.
And that wicked one toucheth him not. The only passage in the book of 1 John that wicked one is used, not in reference to the devil, is found in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 12. And there he is actually referring to Cain. And here the Bible states, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother, and wherefore slew he him, because his own works were evil and his brother righteous. This passage, while describing Cain, it refers to him back kind of like Matthew did with the wheat and the tares. It kind of describes Cain as a child of that wicked one. The one that's out to deceive, but in the case of Cain, not necessarily deceive, but harm as well, through malice, through violence. And when we look at the devil, that is exactly what he is. He is a wicked one. He's out to deceive us in every way possible. He has the world deceived as we speak. We already mentioned earlier that he has about 61% of the people, and I couldn't even tell you what year that was, believing that he doesn't exist. And that's, of course, the people polled within that poll. But we are living in a dangerous age. People want to live for themselves. And as long as the focus is on themselves, the focus isn't on the enemy. I mean, even when we look at America, we find America pretty much in the same situation as the Roman government was. The Roman government did not fall because of the outsiders. It fell because of insiders. Everyone was partying, everyone was having a good time, and they were entertaining themselves to death. It's been stated that America is entertaining herself to death. We are not focusing on the world or anything around us. We're not focusing on our enemy, but rather we're focusing on, hey, let's be merry and have a great time. Our focus isn't on those around us or what China is doing necessarily per se, but the American society is taught, whatever you want to do, just do it. We are entertaining ourselves, and if America is going to fall, it probably will be as a result of the inside. And when you think about us as Christians and just relating it to our spiritual walk, that's why we fall. If you're a Christian and you fall away from God, it had to do with something on the inside. Not necessarily an outside influence, but because we allowed something to creep in and it affected us on the inside. I stated before, there's a song that they sing down south, I'm taking back what the devil stole from me. The devil didn't steal anything from you. You surrendered it, whether willingly, whether knowingly. The devil didn't take it. In order for him to take it, you had to surrender it over. The devil did not steal the earth and all of creation from Adam in the beginning. He deceived him. And because of Adam partook of that bite, with that bite, he forfeited everything he had over to the devil. The devil did not steal all of creation. Adam knowingly handed it over. Let's go back to the book of Matthew chapter 13 and verse 39. Matthew 13 and verse 39. And whenever you have it, just go ahead and read it. Matthew 13:39.
The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels.
Once again, we're back to the parable of the wheat and the tares. And what title is also given to the devil within this parable? Starts with an E. The enemy. When we think about an enemy, do we think of our closest friend? Do we think of somebody who's out for our best good? No. We think of the complete opposite. In fact, we probably think more along the times of warfare. In World War II, the enemy was Japan. Well, in our spiritual walk, we have an enemy as well. And it involves combat. And we are discussing spiritual warfare for a reason. Because we have a real enemy who's out to get us. When we look at this name of the devil, it is one that gives the reader an awareness that the warfare is not one of a defense of a particular territory, but it's one out of hatred. The devil hates man. Why? Is it just because we are created in God's image? Not necessarily. If you can't get directly at somebody, what are you going to do? You're going to use something against them. The devil cannot touch God. In fact, he cannot even enter through the walls of heaven because no evil thing can enter into heaven. Thus, he uses man. Not only are we created in God's image, but we are a way to get at God's heart. Because it is for us that he gave his only begotten Son. He gave up heaven's most valuable treasure to redeem mankind to himself. Fellowship, that we may talk one-on-one. That we don't have to have someone in the far distance to go on our behalf. But God wanted to talk to us on a one-to-one basis. And because of that, he sent his Son. Because he loved us so much. That's what John 3:16 states. God loved the world so much, he gave his only Son.
I have a question.
Yes.
The reapers are the angels. Are they God's angels or the devil's angels?
I believe that they are God's angels.
Okay.
And the reason for this is when we did our Tuesday night Bible study, we talked about angels and end times prophecy. And it appears that when the rapture happens, that it's not just going to be a matter of just a quickening of the Holy Ghost pulling us up, but God's literally going to send his angels down and pull the church out.
Yeah. Okay. Because I had little notes here, but I couldn't read. I figured it was from something else. That's pretty bad. That's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. That's what it appears.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Someone else go ahead and read Luke chapter 10 and verse 19. Luke 10:19.
Behold, I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you.
How much power has God given? Some? All power. Over what? The enemy. He gave us all power over the enemy. So there's no reason for Christians to fear anything. Because we already have all power. There's no reason for us to be trampled underfoot or drawn away by the lust of this world or by the enemy, because we are given all power to overcome. Not just some. And we don't just overcome one enemy. We don't just overcome some enemies. We overcome all enemies, because we find it in Luke chapter 9 that Christ gave all power to his disciples to cast out all demons. Not just some, but all of them. Sorry, I lost my spot. Someone go ahead and read Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 2. Ephesians 2:2. And before we get there, let's just pause one moment and go back to the last thought about the enemy. So I'm going to go ahead and read 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 26. 1 Corinthians 15, 26.
The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death.
Something that it doesn't seem like we have a grapple on right now. Because everyone dies at this point. Christ has not come back and raptured the church. And Christ proved that he had all power over death when he resurrected from the grave. But just keep in mind that he will be defeated as well. Death, the final enemy, will be defeated and cast along with everyone else that he goes with. So the Christian really has no reason to fear anything, because God is in control of every situation. Not only in life, but the enemy of death that it seems like no one can escape, God has defeated and provided a way for the Christian to overcome. And that we don't have to fear. Because greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. Someone go ahead and read Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 2.
Wherein in time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience.
When we look at this passage in Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 2, everything's literal. Literal world, literal air. And when we look at the Greek word, that's exactly what it means, is air. When we look at it, it occurs within 7 verses of the New Testament. Someone go ahead and read Acts chapter 22 and verse 23. Acts 22, 23. Someone else go ahead and read 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and 26. 1 Corinthians 9, 26. And someone else, 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Acts 22, 23, 1 Corinthians 9, 26, and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. Whoever has Acts 22, 23, just go ahead and read that.
And as they cried out and cast off their clothes and threw dust into the air.
Was it imaginary air, figuratively speaking of the air? No, they literally picked up the dust of the ground and threw it into the literal air. How about 1 Corinthians 9:26? 1 Corinthians 9:26.
I therefore so run not as uncertainly, so fight I, not as one that beateth the air.
So Paul's speaking about that great race upon which we are to run. And he says that he doesn't do it, but he does not fight as one that beateth the air. Literal air. Because guess what he's talking about here? He's talking about sport. He's talking about boxing. Did you ever see anyone practice? They might be throwing some punches into the air. Once again, it's a literal air. It's not figurative. It's not a symbolic speech. But the air we're talking about is literally the prince and power of the air. The air that this man was beating here in 1 Corinthians 9, is the literal air. Not as one that practices for boxing.